Well, fuck. For most of my life, after the age of 19 at least, I thought I knew who I was, what I wanted, and what beliefs, ideas, and even morals I carried around. But then I recently dug up an old Notion page. It's a goal setting sheet, pretty rudimentary, from like 3 years ago. And then I remembered that 3 years ago, I set radically different goals from the ones I have now, which led me to think for me to set these radically different goals, I must have been a radically different person 3 years ago. And this truly genius conclusion of mine shouldn't come as a surprise. You know you are very different from the person you were 10 years ago, 3 years ago, fuck, even 6 months ago. It's basically just a natural byproduct of living with an open mind and learning about life along the way, which is more or less standard self development theory. But this also posed another question to me: how does rapid identity change happen? Because I'm talking about real, profound, once in a lifetime experiences that then change a person forever. Look, identity change doesn't only work through the passing of time. People can quite literally stay the same for years. That means identity is usually a quite stable concept. On the other hand, it's not just improving, learning, and developing slowly either. Because that's one way, yeah, sure. But it's not the only way. No, there's a more extreme path you can take to change your identity. And this is one I've, though unconsciously, chosen multiple times before. Now, I've looked into the psychology research, and though the literature is quite niche, it is fucking fascinating. So, what is identity, anyways? There are multiple ways psychologists think about identity, and after all, it is a massive topic. Identity is something everybody naturally cares about a lot, since what's actually more interesting than yourself? Two of these theories explain identity pretty well: self concept and identity formation. Both theories answer the imminent question of who am I? And both agree that your identity is a honeypot mixture of your habits, beliefs, memories, ideas, values, internal drivers, imagined futures, and much more. Self concept goes even further, describing three distinct parts of your identity. You've got self image, which is the view of yourself, self esteem, which is the value of yourself, and you've got the wishful slash the ideal self, and that is who you want to be in the future. I'm not going to dissect the details here, but what becomes clear is that all of these properties, which are distinctly yours, habits, ideas, internal drivers, as well as self image, self esteem, and your ideal self, are subject to rapid change depending on where you stand in life. This is something identity formation looks at: possible influences on identity change. For example, you've got cognitive influences, your cognitive stage of development, also known as your age. You have scholastic influences like school and university. You have social cultural influences, expectations from society, parenting influences, and finally, a big one, cyber socializing and the internet, which is pretty massive. Watching this video, for example, can change how you think about identity, which in turn allows for expansion of beliefs, knowledge, and following actions. Not only do these influences change who you are at your core, for example, we all remember the massive influence school had on our identity, but they also come, go, and change over time. Moving out changes the influence your parents have on you, dropping out of university suddenly nullifies its influence on you, and consuming the internet radically shapes who you are, depending on the type of content you watch or read. But just as I said before, with some, even most people, identity doesn't change much at all. So why does identity usually stay stable? If you look at the general population, it's obvious most people avoid changes to their identity. Staying stuck in repetitive patterns, working jobs they don't care about, keeping up with self destructive weekend habits for years. Why is that? Well, two explanations are habituation, habits are hard to break, and cognitive dissonance theory. Cognitive dissonance theory proposes that we're motivated to maintain a consistent identity because changing fundamental beliefs, habits, or ideas is uncomfortable, risky, and scary. If you have personal needs met, decent relationships, shelter, income, etc., there is no real need to change because change can mean losing things. I'd assume that you, dear viewer, are not stuck in this avoidance type thinking. You have to take risks to be rewarded, right? Well, I believe there are two fundamental ways of taking risks to change your identity. The first path is gradual, slow, based on small habit changes, like increasing your knowledge, skills, and self awareness, which is the standard path. This is also called self expansion, which means learning and experiencing things you integrate into your identity over time. With enough consistency and time, you gather enough evidence. For example, I'm now the type of person who goes to bed early and reads books instead of going out on the weekends, to change your identity over time. That's pretty fucking standard and not really a reason to make a video on this topic. Millions have done that before, it seems. No, the most interesting part is this: it's not the only way to change. So, what forces a hard identity upgrade? What is powerful enough to break the current perception of yourself? Well, the other way is a concept I almost stumbled upon by accident, but it's a fucking psychological powerhouse. Introducing to you transformative experiences. This is the second pathway you can take to identity change. It's the hard slap in the fucking face type of pathway, the transformative pathway. Transformative experiences radically change the agent, which is you, in both an epistemic and personal way. Epistemic change means that you learn what something is like, which you couldn't have otherwise known. For example, how sex feels, what falling in love is like, or how it feels to become a parent. Personal change is pretty simple, because as a result of a transformative experience, your core agentic features like preferences, goals, ideas, and beliefs will change, sometimes radically. Transformative experiences take your current identity, basically smash it to pieces, and then throw you out the other side as a totally changed person. I mean, think about parenthood. Most parents agree that having a child is one of their most significant life-changing moments. But if you don't have children, like I do, you can literally not comprehend or imagine how it would feel to have a child. The best you could do is approximate, either through similar experience, for example, raising a pet, or by learning from others who have done it before and listening to their experiences. But it's not even close to the actual thing, like fathering or mothering a goddamn human infant, and you know that. You also don't know how parenthood would affect your identity. You can, again, guess that the child suddenly jumps to priority number one. Your beliefs, motivations, goals, and habits, basically your entire identity, would change to fit the child into your life and give the best possible care. But again, you just don't know. Maybe you just run away from the responsibility instead. Transformational experiences have this unteachable lesson vibe to them. You just don't know until you've done it. Examples of potentially transformational experiences include, but are definitely not limited to, parenthood, which is regarded as the paradigm of transformation, sense modality and sensory experiences. I mean, imagine a blind person seeing for the first time. Love and relationships, which means falling in love, breaking up, losing your virginity. Social identity, moving up or down in classes, or even moving countries. Tragedy, of course, a loss of a loved one, or moral failure. And ideology, for example, if you decide to engage in religion for the first time. Transformational experiences change who you are, and they change who you are forever. In my own experience, when going through a transformational experience, you step through these 4 stages. First, you have an old identity, and often a desire to change, wanting the transformative experience, or you just stumble across it by accident. Second, the transformative experience happens. You're thrown into the unknown and have to adapt rapidly, sometimes painfully, through a period of both suffering and incredible joy and novelty. The third step is irreversible self-knowledge. You gain a mountain of personal proof that you gather during the experience that changes your identity in the long term, providing you with evidence that you are truly a new person. And the fourth step is a bit of a distant one. I'd call it narrative experience, because when looking back at the transformative experience, you see 2 different people, an old self and a new self, and then you construct a story out of it, which often compresses a week-long storyline into one turning point. Transformative experiences hit harder than a slower path to identity change, and they're infinitely more powerful. Now to the last question. Can and should you initiate total identity reconstruction? Transformational experiences in most people's lives happen more or less accidentally, maybe even without much thought. For example, accepting your first job position, when you fall in love for the first time, or when you travel alone in the world, experiencing your first taste of an incredible sense of freedom. I mean, these things happen, they're pretty much standard in one's development. I mean, transformational experiences nonetheless, but they happen. But you can also choose them. You can choose to undergo a transformational experience. You could theoretically choose to become a parent and probably get it done in the next year. I mean, is that smart? Or rather, is this rational? Transformative experience theory argues that we can't make rational decisions about this subject. Psychologically, there's simply too much uncertainty attached to a transformative experience. You've got what it's like uncertainty, which means you simply don't know what the experience is going to be like. And you've got future preference uncertainty. You literally don't know how your preferences will going to change after the experience. I mean, are they going to be better or worse? And from which point of view are we talking anyway, from the past or the future self? Then you've got self uncertainty, which means that there is a real possibility of a future self who is so different from their past that neither the earlier nor later self regards the other as being the same person. Which again, is that good? Is that bad? Or is it just insane? I mean, suddenly we're bridging kind of into deep philosophical territory, and I don't think we want that too much. I mean, the general consensus on the matter, which I agree with, seems to be the following: don't try to be perfectly rational, since that is literally impossible given the massive uncertainty of a transformational experience. Be reasonable in the context of your situation. I'm guessing here, but for most of you watching, charging headfirst into parenthood from one day to the next might not be the most reasonable of choices. Some of you probably don't want the transformational experience in the near future anyway. I'm guessing again here, but I'd expect most of us are satisfied with our current identities and not just avoiding identity change because it's scary. Yet, there have been times in my life where I desperately needed a total identity reconstruction. I mean, I took what looked like a massive risk when I dropped out of university to pursue content creation and to discover and follow my own interests. This was like fucking 2 years ago or some shit. I mean, I started to post on Twitter. I made my first dollar online. Eventually, I signed my first four-figure client. Again, these things did not happen simultaneously, but we compressed timelines in our head to shape a more compelling story, which we then register as the turning point in our lives. In the end, dropping out of uni was the only right decision, but again, transformational experience. You only know after you've done it. It might not always be rational to choose to go through a transformational experience, and which specific one anyway, but I mean, fuck me, what is life for anyway, right? Taking risks literally makes life all the more interesting. In any case, I hope this video helped you in self-expanding ideas and beliefs about identity. I mean, God knows I found this fascinating, so I hope you did as well. In any case, thank you for watching. See you beautiful fuckers next week.